If the X-Men had a middle name, it would be Drama.
From secret siblings to strange romances and even unexpected team breakups, join us as we delve into some of our favorite unexpected dramatic X moments. Let's look at an odd love story, the Island Lovers. Krakoa, now the safe space for mutants to exist and thrive, is technically a mutant themselves, well, half a mutant. Akara was an ancient mutant that eventually grew into a massive island. Pretty soon, someone came by with the Twilight Sword and cut the island in half, but using that sword caused a portal to Amenth to open. Amenth is a world in another dimension, and this world is dark and full of bad things. One half went there, that half was later named Araco, and the other half, Krakoa, stayed here on Earth. The two sides of this mutant were separated for a long time, growing on their own and becoming their own islands. In the era we are used to, Summoner was being sent on a mission to Earth from the Demon Planet, so he took a small part of Araco, the Arak Coral, as his mode of transport. If all that wasn't enough, something truly unexpected happened when the Coral met Krakoa. They got together, presumably in a romantic sense if the dialogue from the X-Men present is anything to go off of. In the end, the actual Araco Island wanted to stay as its own island, and it was just the Coral that got involved with the mutant safe haven.
Not only is this next moment in X-Men history centered around a surprise party, so surprise, but it also involves the most bizarre and unexpected turn of events. Professor X decided to throw a surprise party for Kitty Pryde and hired the most inappropriate clown, Obnoxio, for the party. In this first panel, we see Obnoxio smoking a cigar and thinking about how he's going to spend the pile of money the professor promised him. The even weirder part of this story is that while this crazy party is going down with this ridiculous clown, the X-Mansion is also at the same time infiltrated by a villainous mutant who can turn himself into ice cream. Yeah, and that's not even the weirdest thing about him. Appropriately, his name is Ice Cream, but it is not spelled like how you think. It's spelled like an eyeball and the shrieking sound that is referred to as a scream. What's more is no one seems to know that Obnoxio is even coming to this party. I guess it's like a super secret surprise. And Obnoxio also ends up in a ridiculous fight with the X-Men where he also surprisingly manages to hold his own pretty well.
I don't want that clown at my birthday party, but what I do want, genuine a history textbook from the Marvel Universe with all the changes Marvel characters have made to history, because Wolverine is everywhere. He is collecting major historical events like he is trying to fill out a bingo card. Today we are looking at the time he checked off the Valentine's Day Massacre. The year is 1929. Wolverine is established to be a smuggler for the Prohibition era, and he has a girlfriend. He is also, of course, being pursued by Victor Creed, Sabretooth, when is he not? Wolverine heads out into Chicago, but when he gets back to his hotel, his girlfriend is there on the floor, lifeless. Wolverine thinks it was Capone who did it, Al Capone, because they are in Chicago. But Al Capone insists it wasn't him, and he gives Wolverine a paper with the location of the guy who did it. Guess what the location was? That's right, the garage for the Valentine's Day event. There were 8 men there in the Marvel Universe, not 7. Of course, Wolverine's healing factor saves him, and we find out that the reason Al Capone even came up with the Valentine's Day treat was because Sabretooth suggested it. Do the Wolverine writers just have a roulette wheel in their office with all the painful historical events on it, and whenever they need inspo on how to make Wolverine's backstory more tragic, they just write about whatever it lands on? I don't know. Wolverine at the Valentine's Day event and Sabretooth being the mastermind behind it is just something I never ever could have predicted.
Wolverine and Sabretooth both do have a surprising amount to do with history. I guess that's what happens when you get as old as they get to be. But we all know that Cyclops, aka Scott Summers, has always, as long as he's been around, which has been a lot less of time, had a thing for Jean. But when it comes to the classic X-Men team, he actually wasn't the only one. In fact, pretty much everyone was head over heels for Jean at one point, maybe except for Bobby, who back in the day, honestly, he did like to flirt, but mainly was really more in love with ice cream. Bobby was truly the youngest of the bunch, as is evident by his super obsession with ice cream. Both Angel and Beast also seem to hold a bit of a flame for the lone female member of the X-Men team, with Angel actually being pretty close at a few points to winning Jean's heart. But in one fateful panel, we'd even learn that Charles Xavier, yep, the professor, Jean's mentor and teacher, was also apparently in love with her. Maybe not as surprising at the time, but certainly not something you'd expect to look back on and see in retrospect if you are a fan of more modern comics or even stuff that was like the early 2000s, you know what I mean? Especially when we are later given the retconned origin of Professor X first meeting Jean when her powers first manifested as a child after the traumatic loss of her best friend Annie. Yeah, just makes it's weird.
Wolverine cheers for the Calgary Flames. I know, I can't believe it either. Alberta kids, we have two choices growing up, the Oilers or the Flames, and this Edmonton girl argues that he picked the wrong side, not to throw stones from a glass house. In Wolverine First Class 6, Wolverine is tasked with babysitting on the night of the 7th game in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He's not missing it for a single flamin' thing. He is also featured in another panel eating donuts off his claws, and in my world, they are from Timmy's. Wolverine rightly claims that it's his moral right as a Canadian to watch hockey when he wants. It's what he does best. The X-Men are truly in another universe because I don't think the Calgary Flames were in the Stanley Cup playoffs in 2008, the year this comic dropped, or the year before, or the year after. In my very intense research about why Wolverine might be a Calgary Flames fan and not a fan of a good team, one particular Reddit comment caught my eye, and it's about Wolverine's healing factor. See, his healing factor helps him come back from pretty much anything, even regenerating from just a single drop of him. This user commented, "I'm sure having the ability to almost instantly heal from any wound helps you when you're a Flames fan." Not to start a hockey war, but facts are facts. I know I'm about to get cooked in the comments section, I know that, sorry.
When Cassandra Nova was first introduced in the comic, she was considered to be quite a mysterious figure, and I think that's why there were a lot of folks out there who were surprised when we learned of her origin. Now, as cool of a character as I feel like she is, her origin sure is super weird and super hard if you're just explaining it to someone who doesn't read comics. And in that way, I guess it's pretty unexpected. Although, as a comic book fan, I guess I found it less surprising than maybe some other folks would because, well, comics. Cassandra Nova was initially believed to be this mutant-adjacent villain, yet kind of a very different being. She wasn't a human, but she wasn't exactly a mutant either, so what was she? Well, we later find out that she was in fact neither. She was a Mummadry, that's a thing. The evil twin sister of Charles Xavier, who was born without a body and so replicated her brother's body kind of in the womb. As with all Mummadry, in regards to the Shi'ar's beliefs surrounding them, Mummadry are basically like our evil anti-selves that manifest when we're first born and we gotta fight them to be born. Charles sensed that Cassandra was bad, battled her, and won in order to be born. But she was able to live on by sheer force, starting as a blob of cells in a sewer wall and eventually growing into the physical being that we'd all come to know. Seriously, that's her origin. Even more wild is the fact that this origin is actually unique to Cassandra. You see, not all Mummadry can do this. She was only able to accomplish such a feat because of the genetic potential of her brother Charles. Even for a Mummadry, it's weird, you know?
Everyone's favorite web-slinger was almost an X-Men. Spider-Man and the X-Men rarely team up, and X-Men 27 might explain why. Beast and Iceman finds Spider-Man to ask if he wants to join the team. Spider-Man turns them down because he already turned down the Avengers at that point, plus he's super busy and he believes he's destined to work alone. He was still in his emo teen era. Spider-Man swings away before the X-Men pair can argue further. Maybe we don't see Spidey with the X-Men all that much anymore because they're still hurting from this interaction.
I know I was certainly surprised by the ending to one of my favorite recent mutant team series, Hellions. In the final issue, issue number 18, the Hellions are forced to face the music after Orphan Maker is basically put on trial for breaking one of Krakoa's 3 governing laws. It's like the 3 things that they say on Krakoa, just don't do these things and you're cool. Ugh. As a result, Orphan Maker is sentenced to exile in the pit, and Nanny basically decides to go with him. It's all super heartbreaking. Thinking about it makes me want to cry. Now, the other members of the team are basically forced to disband by the council. Now directionless, they return to life even more dejected than they were at the beginning of the series, with none of them really feeling at home any longer on the mutant island nation of Krakoa. For a series about found family and purpose, it honestly ends on a very tragic note.
A man in the X-Men universe just recently gave birth to a space station. I'm as shocked as you are. Nothing in my life could have prepared me to say that sentence or explain it. So at the Hellfire Gala, something that Amanda actually talked about in part 1, a lot happens. Explosions and fighting, and a birth. Monarch has reality warping powers, and he is known to be an Omega level mutant, so he used his powers to impregnate himself with the space station to keep it safe. The station was Peak 7, later called Keep, and the station was used as a means of communication between Krakoa and Arako, the two mutant islands we actually covered at the beginning.
This moment is so strange. I literally reacted to my thought about what I was about to say, and I was like, man, this is a really weird one. It's really that weird, guys. Hold my hand because it's gonna get weird. This moment is so strange that it needs to just be mentioned. It needs to be immortalized in this video, so here we go. At the beginning of Uncanny X-Men issue number 178, we see Professor X reminiscing on the first student to join his X-Men team, Scott Summers. Cyclops had recently left the team to settle down with his new wife, Madelyn Prior, who looks exactly like Jean. You see, Scott had considered that she actually might be the reincarnation of Jean, but don't worry, we later find out she was actually Jean's clone, created by Mr. Sinister using a spark from the Phoenix. Professor X is reading a letter he's received from Scott detailing the events of his newlywed life, and it includes a picture of Scott. But not just Scott, it's Scott and Maddie in bed together. What? Not only is this a weird thing to send your teacher slash kind of pseudo father figure, but it's also weird in the sense that it makes you wonder, who took that photo? Well, thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and make your mark on the comments section down below. This was Juliana.
And Amanda, and until next time, you stay nerdy.
Bye.
Someone at the hotel, I imagine, they were like, could you just take this photo of us in bed together? I'd be like,
Self-timer.
Who are you sending this to? Oh, just my teacher.
It's even weirder because Professor X had a crush on her.
That, on Jean, yeah, and Maddie looks just like Jean. It's pretty weird. Oh boy.